The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Ready when you are, people. Welcome to a new episode of the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker in New York, and I'm here with my co-host and great friend, who now looks like a peach Melba, Tom Astor. Tom, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm feeling peachy. Peachy, nice, peachy. I'm looking peachy. I'm using new filters that we just discovered on Zoom.
Terrifying. Terrifying when you discover that there are filters. In fact, we discovered it because our producer, Anna Marie, decided to have a permanent tan, which, once working with her for over a year, we realized she's not really ever had a tan of this nature before. And now she always has a tan. And it turns out she doesn't have a tan. She has a Zoom filter. So and Tom has now become a peach Melba because of the filters.
And you're using the paler filter because you normally have a tan and you don't.
That's because I actually found out I've got limes. Dun, dun, dun.
What does that mean?
I found out I've got limes, people. Those bloody ticks that you get upstate.
I thought you were about to say I found out I was half Sri Lankan.
Well, I am half Sri Lankan, but I'm still half Sri Lankan. The Lyme didn't manage to suck that out of me. What happens with limes is you go on a course of antibiotics, which, by the way, you can have alcohol with these antibiotics. I found out. But what you can't do is stay in the sun. You have to be out of the sun.
Wow.
So no sunlight. So as a result, I'm becoming anemic for me. But anyway, what are you drinking, Tom?
I'm having a Disaronno fizz.
Again?
No, it's different. No, it's different, completely different from last time. This is even simpler. I don't have last time was quite involved. It was Disaronno based, but I quite like my Disaronno at the moment. This is a different take on the last cocktail. This is really simple. This is super healthy. This is soda water, which is super healthy. Fresh lemon juice, super healthy, and Disaronno, and you literally don't need any sugar in it or anything. Stirred on the rock. Yeah.
That is different. How is that a fizz? I thought fizz always had like egg white or something in it.
Soda water is fizzy.
Oh, you just made up the name. This is your own cocktail, basically.
No, it was as usual. I had my assistant make it for me, my girlfriend.
Wow. The assistant. I love it. Well, my friend, am drinking something I made up as well. I was digging through my refrigerator and I found that there was some pomegranate juice. And I thought, pomegranate juice. Then I'm like, wait a second, right behind the pomegranate juice was passion fruit juice. And I'm like, whoa, I'm going to do a combo passion fruit, pomegranate with just a dash of pomegranate, and it's actually with tequila, lime juice, and Cointreau shaken and then poured over a very large ice cube. And I recently got this very cool ice cube making sort of paraphernalia, which produces very nice, massive, clear ice cubes. Takes forever. You put hot water in them. It has a basin of water that freezes underneath it, but it produces completely crystal clear, big, fat ice cubes. So cheers, my dears.
It's nice. I think that's the first time I've ever had anyone try and make water cool, but there we go. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I will try and make anything cool, even water cool. But I do like a good ice cube. I'm very partial to a good, solid, big ice cube, but I do think it makes a difference because the little ones, they dissolve in your drink too quickly. There's too much surface area because of all the, there's lots of them in your glass. And one big one just looks beautiful in there. And I found that when I drink my cocktail, the ice cube's still in there in the end. But that's probably because I just drink it fast. I suddenly realized as I was saying it.
Yeah, or you're not really drinking that much because there's a fucking great big ice cube taking up all the space. Doesn't sound very sensible.
Then there's that. So people, booze news. A little bit of booze news before we get to our extraordinary guest this week. Our booze news is that once again, supermodels and celebrities are getting in on the drinks business, although this time a non-alcoholic version. And why this makes it onto booze news, because it isn't even alcohol, is because they are marketing themselves as an alternative to having a drink in the bar. And they're in all the places you would find a good alcoholic beverage. Bella Hadid, the supermodel, has joined forces with the brand Kin Euphorics and has apparently become co-founder and a partner. Now, the reason why I sort of say co-founder as if it's a surprise is because the brand's been around for a few years already, and she just signed with them. I'm not sure you can be a founder if you're not there at the beginning. But hey, semantics, people. She's the co-founder, and I'll just take it at a word there. And she actually she wrote on her Instagram account, the reason why I'm coming on with Kin is not only to consistently give you new formulas, creatives and products, which by the way, if that wasn't written by a PR agency, I don't know what was. But she also said, but to also teach you about brain health and how we can help with social, personal, physical and mental pressures we face on a regular basis. Well, that's what I want to learn from a supermodel for sure. Anyway, this is a female-owned brand. They've raised over $10 million in funding since 2018. And the woman who actually started it, called Bachelor, which is slightly ironic for a female brand, told Vogue that it gets very lonely running a company on your own. And that's why she listed Bella Hadid. So there you have it, people. If you're lonely, get yourself a supermodel. That's booze news for you. We're on to our other wonderful guest. Our guest today is a speaker, author, certified meditation coach, and the CEO and founder of The Daily Shifts, an online company dedicated to inspiring lasting transformation of the mind, body, and soul, and has just released his first book, Holy Shit, We're Alive! The Psychedelic Journey of an Ex-Mormon Millionaire. Please welcome Doug Cartwright. Doug, welcome.
So good to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now.
Fantastic. So by the way, I'm looking at you and I can't quite tell whether you're either in a hospital bedroom, because I look at what's going on behind you. You also look like an astronaut because of what you're wearing on your ears, these huge silver headphones and this sort of what looks like a jumpsuit that could be an astronaut.
I got to zip it up more. Maybe if I put the hood on too.
Now we're literally going to space with Doug Cartwright, which I think might
go to space.
He's been taking. Now he feels like he has to be in space.
Yeah, I'm currently in Marina Del Rey, California. So I'm in a hotel room, right? Not in a hospital. But by the way, I recently bought these. These are the new Apple AirPod Pro Max, I think is what they're called.
AirPod.
And they're incredible.
AirPod on steroids. That's the biggest thing I've ever seen.
So these are the old AirPods, right? They last for like 45 minutes. I put these things on. It has like a 12-hour battery life. So I'm all about these new AirPods. Even though I look like an astronaut, I'm all for it.
But how can those be an AirPod? The other thing's tiny, goes in your ear.
I know.
Of course this has a 12-hour battery. Look at the size of it. It looks like you've got a Tesla stuck to your head.
It's fantastic. I'm all about the technology. Slowly turning into a cyborg.
No, but the technology is meant to get smaller, not bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone can say there's more batteries if there's a huge thing on your head. I mean, come on, Apple, get with the frigging program here.
We got to go with the program.
What are you drinking, Doug?
So I thought about this for a while, and I'm doing something. It's going to sound like a sponsored post, but it's not. So I love these things right here called Athletic Greens. I'm not a big alcohol drinker. I don't drink, really. So I drink this every morning. It's like 75, what does it say on here? 75 proven whole food ingredients. So I just put it in my water bottle. But here's the thing. It tastes like shit. It's like straight green juice. It is not tasty at all.
This is not sounding like an advertisement for this product at this point. You're good.
But here's the key. I throw in an emergency packet, like this super orange emergency packet into it as well. And it helps with the taste. And so it's like, I drink this every day after my workout.
I was going to say, this is something that we drink in the morning after we've gone drinking.
Yep. So I'm making it right now, pouring this baby in, mix in with the Emergency Plus. Apparently, from what they say on the internet, vitamin D and zinc help with COVID, maybe. I don't know if that's true or not. Throwing that in as well.
With those headphones on, you're fine. You won't get COVID.
Exactly. They're blockers.
They certainly are.
And I shake this up and there we go. It's a power drink.
No, see, you're clearly missing the vodka or the tequila or the gin.
Clearly missing the vodka. I'm more of a tequila guy. When I do drink, I'm more of a tequila guy.
So when you do drink, you do know this is a drinking cocktail show. I love it.
Do.
He brings himself on with some weird little packets of green and some vitamin stuff, horrible little things, throws it into what looks like a baby's bottle, shakes it around with some horrible water from the tap, and then he's trying to drink it and tell me it's good. Doug, I'm not convinced. I think you've had far too many of these psychedelics, and I want to get to your psychedelics.
Let's get into it, yeah.
Really put you on some strange path. You've written this book, Holy Shit, We're Alive. That's what got my attention in the first place, because I'm on a mission to really realize just the fact that we are alive and that we need to stop and smell the roses and take sort of take every moment as it comes, right? Talk to us about, this book, first of all. Tell us a little bit about the book, but I want to get into who you are and your story too.
Yeah. So the title's interesting. So I grew up in the east side of Salt Lake City, Utah, which is an upper middle class neighborhood where everyone is white and everyone is conservative in their political beliefs and everyone is Mormon. And so growing up, I kind of didn't have a lot of diversity. And this was kind of before social media, before, internet of sorts. It was slowly coming on. And so I didn't know any different. So my whole life, I always was doing what I was supposed to do. And so like when you're growing up in the church, like your whole life is laid out for you. You're taught as a kid, like, this is where you are before you're born. You're like a spirit in spirit heaven. And then you choose to come have a body. And then the purpose of your life is a test. And you go to school and you get good grades. And then you go on your service mission, which we'll get into in the Mormon faith. They have LDS service missions. And you get married and then you have kids. And then you get a good job and you buy the white picket fence and then you die. And so like your whole life is planned out for you.
So there you go. In a nutshell, that's what being a Mormon is. And by the way, I did not know that's what it. I like the way you paraphrase the whole thing there. That's pretty funny. I'm sure there's a few Mormons out there who'd be like, wait a second. Yeah. Quite like that, but anyway, that is fascinating. That obviously your background as a Mormon, so that sets you up for, at that point as a kid. Then were you not enjoying that life as a child? I'm curious, because before we jump forward, because I'm sure you've told this story a few times about where you started. That is a very poignant part of your life, and we like to dig into that. So, what growing up, in that environment. Were you happy? Were you unhappy? Were you already searching? Were you confused? What did it feel like to grow up in that life?
It was incredible. I had an amazing childhood. And as I get older, I realized how rare and how special it was that I had parents that like loved and supported me. Like I came from a very loving, safe home. And you don't realize until you get older you hear all these horror stories. And as I get older, I really, really appreciated the way I was raised. And so I had a great childhood. My dad was not a Mormon. My mom was. And so I didn't have this very super strict household that a lot of people do. And so that kind of left room for kind of this open-mindedness leeway. But overall, my childhood was fantastic.
Can you be born into a more, I'm wondering, like the Jewish faith, like it travels the female line. Is it, how does it work with the Mormons?
So it's not like, I never claim like Mormon is my heritage. Well, like Jews will call themselves like Jews by heritage, where Mormon, it's more of like you get baptized when you're 8 years old, and it's a very strict living, not requirements in a sense, but just like a standard of living is very, very high. So it's no sex, no alcohol, no caffeine. So people in Mormon faith don't drink coffee, and you go to your religious services on Sunday. And I mean, the Mormon Church does have a lot of great traits, but it's very, I think, a closed-minded. It's a very much like a church, I believe, in my opinion, for like white people.
Wow. I mean, so what are their sort of things that they're allowed to do? I mean, if you're not allowed to drink, not allowed to have alcohol, not allowed to have sex. I mean, sex before marriage, you mean, clearly? Yeah,
sex before marriage. Yeah, once you're married, it's like have all the sex you possibly can and have as many kids as you want. So like the average Mormon has like 5 kids.
Wow, there you go.
You hear Mormon families that have like 10 to 12 kids. It's insane. My mom has 9 siblings, so it's crazy.
So you call yourself an ex-Mormon. So clearly you've got, you can say all this because you're not currently practicing Mormon, and you are also an ex-Mormon millionaire. So what happened next?
Yeah, so going back into my childhood, one thing I realized was a bigger of a deal than I realized was I grew up as a fat kid too. So I was like the chubby, pudgy kid that like kind of got teased every now and then. And then I remember when I was like in 2nd grade, I'll never forget it. I was a recess older kid who I thought was cool. We were playing football and he made fun of me and called me the fat kid. And that was like, when you're in 2nd grade, you're not self-aware. It's not like I was like sizing myself up against these other kids. But I remember that was the first time I'm like, oh, something's wrong with me. Like, I'm not good enough. Like something's physically wrong with me. I'm fat. And so that's where I created like this origin story that I talk about in the book, is like everyone kind of has an origin story. When they were a kid, at one point, something traumatic happened in their life, and then they tell themselves, I'm not good enough. And then they spend the rest of their life trying to prove that false.
I know that's what you do. I mean, and I know that's what a lot of people do. But are there also people out there who, I don't know, think that they are told they're not good enough, but then don't believe it, actually go the opposite direction and go, I'm going to spend my life proving that I am the best at this, and sod anybody else telling me that I'm not as good as that.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that stems, though, the core root of that decision making is to feel like they're not good enough. They're scared that they're not good enough. They want to prove it right? They want to prove it true. And so it causes them to create, massive success, which is great. But it's the underlying tone behind it all is like this fear of not being good enough.
You accusing every alpha male out there then of having actually an underlying sort of problem issue with them. That's the reason why they're not picking alpha, and they were like, going to succeed, I'm going to win, I'm going to be competitive, I'm going to win the race. I mean, does that apply across everything, like Olympians to sort of heads of business or some of them? I mean, obviously some of them just have got great ideas, but there's a lot of people out there who, what you often think about this competitive spirit that we live by at the West, and certainly in the US, where everything is a competition to some extent.
Yeah, and I don't think it's wrong. I don't think that's a bad thing, a bad way to live. It's not like this is good or bad or right or wrong. It's just so many people use that to fuel thinking that if they accomplish something, if they get the gold medal in the Olympic, scenario you said, then I'll be okay. So it's almost like, okay, if I can just get everything right in order in the right way, and I can get my business and get my wife and get my partner, and then I get the gold medal, then I'll be okay. And so, but that never comes.
Very funny is happening right now. Tom has been attacked by a ferret.
How do you know?
The whole time he was moving around like crazy, and I knew Tom has ferrets, people. And so Tom Doug has been trying to tell us about his childhood and the Mormon faith. Tom has been jumping around in his seat like a jackass. And I mean, what is going on? And I realized by the way he was grabbing his leg that a ferret is trying to climb up his leg and basically bite his nuts. Tom, what is happening?
Yeah, sorry. My girlfriend's decided that it's like this is the right moment to have like ferret playtime, exercise time. Literally, she's got ferrets. They're not my ferrets, they're her ferrets. I don't really like ferrets very much. And you have to put your socks, roll your socks on above your trousers to stop, because they will go up your trousers if you give them the chance.
So you're tucking your pants into your socks.
I've done that already, but they're still crawl up my leg, and they're trying to also bite my leg whilst climbing up it, because that's what they like doing. So unless you go, I don't quite know the antidote to being bitten by a ferret, other than to do what I was just doing, which was putting my feet in the air and trying to look, trying to concentrate.
You did a wonderful job of it, Tom. Don't worry. I had no idea at all, clearly. Let's moving straight, see what we have to deal with on this show.
Yeah, you never know when there's a surprise ferret attack.
You never know what's happening on the Shaken and Stirred show. That's what we like to do. Keep everyone on their toes and not quite sure. So then how did you then go on to become a millionaire? I mean, it's not easy to become a millionaire. You're young enough already right now. So what was it? What was the next step for you?
Yeah. So I'm living in this story that I'm not enough. I'm the fat kid. I don't belong in the society. Another part of the story is I get sent home from I went on a Mormon mission and I got sent home early. I got kicked off. And so now I've got like this overweighting, feeling of not being accepted in my community, not being enough. And so the idea goes off in my head. It's like, oh, well, if I can go make a bunch of money, right, then society will accept me, because the way our society is we value people of wealth. And so this is going to sound crazy, but there's in Utah, because there's a lot of kids, 19, 20, 21-year-olds go on LDS service missions, know how to knock doors, know how to talk to people about church. And so these sales companies will hire these guys to go door to door and sell their products. And so there's an industry in America, whether it's solar panels or alarm systems, that have crazy high margins. And I got recruited to work for a sales company that had uncapped commissions. It was 100% commissions. And basically I'm making anywhere from $1,000 for every sale I could get. And then they make it like a pyramid scheme. So for every person I recruit underneath me, I then get a percentage of their deals as well. And so I was kind of well known growing up in my community. So I mastered this form of sales and became really, really, really good at it, where I could sell, 2 to 6 every single day. And then throughout my career, I recruited, over 100 people So I created like this pyramid in door-to-door sales, and we would travel across the country in the US and go to these towns, and we would sell this product. And the thing that was amazing about it was that the product we were selling was really, really, really good. It was an incredible product. And so it wasn't like it was a scam. It was like we were the first to market in the smart home space. So we're the first person ever in 2011. We knock on your door, you've got a smartphone, we'll sync up your alarm system with cameras, unlock your doors, change your thermostats. You can do it all on your phone. And no one had seen that before. And so we was just like a gold rush, and we just ransacked the United States.
Doug, do you think the Mormons are better at door-to-door than the Jehovah's Witnesses?
I mean, if you can sell someone on the idea that Joseph Smith found gold medal plates in his backyard and got visited by God and that he's a true prophet and people convert to that, I mean, I think that's a pretty good sales job.
That's what I'm talking about. Like seriously. So now, when any of you guys come to my front door, which does happen once in a while, I now realize that the whole thing is a scam. You're basically all training to become door-to-door salesmen to make yourselves millionaires in pyramid schemes. And this is just the training. If you can sell this craziness, then you'll be fine selling something which a good product comes along. Unbelievable.
If a kid from Utah, a Mormon, knocks on your door, right? I promise you, he has heard of door-to-door summer sales, and he's going to get recruited when he gets home. I would bet my life on it.
Amazing. If I get the Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on my door, I make my apologies, but I say that I've got a great friend down the road who has always been fascinated with Jehovah's Witnesses and has always kind of wanted to visit. And then I picked someone I don't particularly annoyed me or irritated me recently, and I send them down. I send them and give them the address, and they want all the literature, and I bombard them with literature and convince the Jehovah's Witnesses that what they want is the meeting. So I haven't heard, and I've never put. No one's ever actually, when I've done it, I've never heard of the kind of what actually happened afterwards. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, there you go. They probably got recruited and sort of taken to another planet or something. Whatever.
I don't like that.
So look, here we are. Your life story is quite amazing. It's very interesting, and I think, and it plays into everything you do. You have this program called, or you're the founder of this company called The Daily Shifts, and it's all about your journey through trauma, introspection, healing, and talk to us about this company, because it's very interesting. It's led you on to obviously to your book, but this is something which is clearly very necessary right now. There's so many people who, especially through the pandemic, who are very lost, are very confused, are lonely, anxiety is through the roof. We've had a lot of people on recently in all different fields, from comedy to business leaders, talking about mental health, and it's an overarching theme in everything that we do. So for you, obviously something happened. What was the shift that happened to you in your life that caused you to obviously become an ex-Mormon, throw away what you were doing, and say the hell with it all?
Yeah. So in 2017, I fell victim to what I've coined in my book as the success void. And what the success void is, if I were to give you a resume of my life, like, it would look successful. Great job, great money, cool house, cool car, travels, goes to sporting events, dates pretty girls, it looks successful. But I had like this deep void. Like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel fulfilled. The church thing wasn't working out for me. And then on June 10th, 2017, and those that'll read the book will really, read the depth of how cool the story is. I had my first psychedelic experience. And my first time using psychedelics was so incredibly profound that it shattered the constructs of reality into confetti. And it left me so raw, so vulnerable, so questioning my life, that it led me on a 2-year journey of like down the rabbit hole.
So basically,
where I tried.
You're not sponsored by that horrible green powder you had at the beginning. You're actually sponsored by a drug company. I can tell.
I'm sponsored by the psychedelic community.
This is what I'm saying right now. I'm like, everyone who's listening to this is like, okay, sign me up. When are we doing psychedelics? What psychedelics were you doing? Can you talk about the specifics?
So, which is really fascinating, and it still doesn't make sense today. My first experience ever was with MDMA, which some people don't even, consider a psychedelic. But my experience on MDMA was so profound that it left me
ecstasy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the chemical name, right? MDMA.
Yeah, MDMA. Yep. And that first time, I really felt like the way I perceived it is I went to another dimension and was like communicating with spiritual guides and like seeing the purpose of life. And that experience was so insane that led me down. I was so curious where that eventually led me to work with psilocybin and LSD and ayahuasca and 5-MeO.
So wait a second, you just said work with.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta work with them. You gotta work with it. It's an experience.
There's a movement at the moment. I've got a friend of mine this lady, she's in her 70s now. She has been working for a long time. She's got this thing called the Beckley Foundation, and she is basically, the amount of money that's been spent on drugs, bonkers. And she's got people like Bill Clinton on the foundation, and she's got some big names, and she is. She is a big believer and a devotee of microdosing, and the funny thing is, I remember 15 years ago people going, it's crazy, they should do planning, and then this crazy lady just taking drugs and trying to get it, so it's a good idea. But the evidence is really, really kind of becoming irrefutable, whereby the magic mushrooms, what's it called, psilocybin, or microdosing actually is having a really tangible effect on lifting depression. People who have had chronic depression for years and have no way out of it have literally been prescribed or be self-medicating, I suppose. The
dosages are big, though. They're not that small. I mean, it's meant to be microdosing, but I was talking to a guy just the other week who was talking about the magic mushrooms specifically, and whereas some of the dosages that you're offered for depression are massive compared to the
it's called a heroic dose. Yeah, and so anything
tell us about it. You're the man. I want to hear about the heroic dose that you took, and all these different crazy things. Half of these I've only ever heard about. I've not experienced myself. But did you? I mean, okay, so you go down this rabbit hole. You were able to come out of the rabbit hole. Are you still doing psychedelics?
I rarely do psychedelics. I mean, I might do like one night of ayahuasca a year now, just as like tune-up.
Tell everyone what ayahuasca is, because that's something which is, it has a lot of myth and legend around it.
Ayahuasca is a whole different beast. I mean, there's no way to describe it. It's the closest human words, because it's not a human experience. Like the closest human words are, in my experiences, my soul was taken out of my body and I got through the veil and saw the inner workings behind the matrix that we live in. I mean, it sounds insane. You communicate with entities from other dimensions. And
holy shit, we're alive.
Yeah. But what it does, it gives you, it shows you your deep subconscious blind spots in your life and where you've experienced pain or trauma or suffering. And it really just cleans out the gutters and gives you new ideas and new perspectives with fresh eyes. And the ayahuasca experience is so profound. It's the equivalent of being reborn. And there's no way to describe it. So what Tom was saying is, you mentioned microdose. So a microdose is really popular with psilocybin and LSD. Microdose would be about 1/10 of a gram. So you're not going to hallucinate on it, but it's kind of just going to turn the lights on. So 1/10 of a gram is a microdose. A hero's dose would be about 4 grams or more. So it's a lot. And you wear a blindfold and you lay down with a therapist and you listen to music for, 4 to 7 hours. And you go through this journey of like your life and your trauma and your childhood and the pain you felt, and you're able to like deal with it. When I say work with it, you're working with the medicine and you're working out your trauma. And when you're done, it leaves you so healed.
It sounds like when we were kids. I mean, we didn't have a teacher. We didn't wear a blindfold either, mate. I mean, and this is ridiculous. If someone of our generation has decided to take what we were doing for fun and actually make a living out of it, I don't even know where to go with this. I'm listening to him and I'm like, wait a second. This is what we used to do in our rooms, in our bedrooms, and hanging out and God knows what else. When I would sit, I remember sitting with Tom one time and doing mushrooms near Stonehenge with my old house, and I thought the skies were opening, and I was going to get swallowed up by something that was coming out of the. You probably don't even remember. Look at you. You can't even remember the time when it even happened. But I mean, it's. I was listening. I'm talking to someone about mushrooms the other day, and they were talking about how that it sort of there are pathways of how we remember things in our brain, and there's sort of channels that are sort of carved through. And then when you do mushrooms, if you think about it as like water traveling down those channels, it's as if when you do the mushrooms, that the water floods over the channels and goes over the top of it, and all of a sudden it's like an ocean, and all of a sudden you're able to see things in many in different ways than you've sort of trained yourself to see things. So all of a sudden, infinite possibilities are open for you. You don't have to see things in only one direction. You see things in many different ways, which helps you right?
Yeah, it literally rewires your neural pathways. And so, an example I like to talk is like if you're a little boy and when you were 6, you were at your friend's house and his dog bit you, right? You now have a trauma experience where in your head, you've believed that dogs equal, I'm going to get bit, stay away from dogs. And that's just the neural pathway. It works the same way. And these experiences, it creates new patterns. So then it's like, oh, actually dogs aren't bad. Dogs are man's best friend. And I can learn to love dogs. And it cleans out that old neural pathway. And so that's one example.
Doug, can it go the other way? Can it go the other way, Doug? Can it not be, if you go in and you love dogs and it decides to carve a pathway of dogs can bite you, shit. Yeah. And all of a sudden you come out the other end and you're like, dogs, and you've always loved dogs. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, why does it have to be positive always? Or is it always positive?
I think it just heightens your awareness. And so if you're in a situation where maybe you may be blind to a potential threat in the future, it's going to expose you to that potential threat. So yeah, absolutely, it could show you. So I think you're so used to thinking like this. And just like you said with the water analogy, the water rises and you're like, oh, there's so many new endless possibilities that I couldn't see because I was stuck in the channel. And so once you get your head up, you can see like, oh, actually this dog might be dangerous, right? And so it'll cause you to pivot if you want to. And so it changes your whole life when you have a true, deep healing psychedelic experience.
So what is how do you say it again? Ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca, yeah.
Ayahuasca. What is that process like? What is that? What do you do? What is that? Just take us through for a moment for everyone to understand sort of taking it. What does it look like? How do you take it? What happens to you? What is the process?
So a true ayahuasca ceremony, it's led by a shaman, a facilitator, and the actual ayahuasca itself is a tea. You drink about a shot glass worth of tea, and the main ingredient is dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT. And somehow the Amazonian tribes understood. So anything like the plant over your right shoulder, like has tons of DMT in it. But if you eat that normally, your stomach will break down the DMT compound and it won't be able to get to your brain. Somehow they realized in the Amazonian jungle that if you boil the ayahuasca leaf, so ayahuasca is a tree, a leaf, and if you boil it with a specific root, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it coats the DMT. So when you ingest it, it gets through your stomach acid, then gets up to your brain. I don't know how they figured that out, but they figured it out. So in that setting, it's done very ceremonial. The word I like to use is sacred. It's not like, hey, Friday night, what are you doing? You want to go do ayahuasca? No, it's like very intentional. It's very intense. And the actual experience itself, after you drink the tea, you kind of sit on a mat in kind of a circular setting, and there's light. The shaman will play music. And so the music really guides your experience. And majority of people in an ayahuasca ceremony, there's a big purge, meaning you actually literally throw up, or it comes out the back end, or it's kind of sounds intense, right? But you're in the experience is energetically removing trauma, childhood abuse, sexual abuse, rape, like anything like this. It's removing these negative energies from you. And it can be a very, very intense experience.
You're going to a party where you're not party, but it's
not a party.
Once a year, you're going through a process where you're going to go through a massive vomiting session or diarrhea. Which, by the way, if it is coming out the back end, how do you plan for that? I mean, what are you wearing? How does that work?
So lucky for me, I've done 9 nights of ayahuasca. I've done 9 sessions. I've never puked and I've never diarrheaed ever. I'm one of the lucky ones. So, but in that moment, you're still coherent enough where you can get up and go to the bathroom.
Okay, that's what I was worried that maybe it was just explosive because
No.
because this could be really ugly at this point. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
So
no wonder, holy shit, we're alive. That's why I was wondering whether that's where you were leading with that particular book title. I'm like, okay, this gives a whole new light to the title of your book. But anyway.
Well, what's incredible, it's very symbolic. So it's like you can feel it in your body where it's like, oh, I feel really sick. And then you can actually pinpoint what it is. So it's like, oh, this is the resentment I've had from my sister for the last 20 years because of this incident that happened. Like, why am I still carrying this around with me? It's just so heavy. And then you literally purge it out physically. And energetically, it feels like this release of like, oh my gosh, I should love my sister. I should stop holding this resentment. And it just creates these, it's insane.
So there's a devil's advocate here because, obviously, look, people have done drugs. People can feel the love when you're doing drugs. MDMA can do that. Ecstasy can do that. Even cocaine can make people feel like, hey, I'm going to talk about it, right? So there's an aspect of, I understand where you're coming from, but does it actually, at the end of all of this, do you feel like you've accomplished something, like you've purged that and you're now over it? And there, why do you keep going back? And two, is it? Do you have a result out of it, or do you just have an awareness out of it?
A little bit of both. So it does kind of invoke you and swarm you with love and openness and connection. So you feel kind of inspired to do the work, but psychedelics don't do the work for you. They show you the way, they show you the path, they show you your homework, right? And then you have to go and integrate it, right? You have to go physically actually make the changes, and that's a lot of work. And so the hardest part of ayahuasca is how are you going to integrate your experience into your normal waking life? And which was the spark to why I started the Daily Shifts. My company was like, oh, we need an integration tool. People need help after having these experiences. How do we implement healthy habits and tools and techniques in our daily life so we can continue to live, a fulfilling, deep, rich life? And so, and all that, no, you don't have to do psychedelics to work with the Daily Shifts, but, I wanted to have a tool of how can I stay in this energy of love and light and connection and positivity.
So talk to us about the Daily Shifts, because obviously this is, you, as I mentioned earlier, it's about your personal journey. This is the reason why you created it, because of trauma, introspection, and healing. But it's an app, right? So you can download this app and you can kind of get involved. But how does it help sort of the thousands of people that you've dealt with discover mental clarity and inner peace and all the rest of it?
Yeah. So what I realized was in my early 20s, when I was like gung ho, door-to-door salesman, made, couple $1 million in my early 20s, I learned a lot of really good skills as far as leadership and goal setting and habits, right? And being, relentless and determined and consistent, but I had no soulful peace. I didn't have any of the deep soul peace. Then I go on this little journey, the spiritual awakening, for 2 years, where I did everything from ayahuasca to mushrooms, to Burning Man, to ecstatic dance, to EMDR, to working with gurus, to psychologists, to float tanks, to meditation. I mean, all the woo-woo. Did all the woo-woo. And over there, I realized, there's lots of really cool, soulful habits, way of living that really connect me, inner peace. And so it's like, how can I combine the two worlds? Like, how can I create an approachable, mindful company that isn't going to seem woo-woo for the type A type? And that's how the Daily Shifts landed. And so I wanted to create something that was approachable, because in my world, in my old world where I was like type A, go, 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 the yoga meditation crowd just seemed weird and woo-woo, and I wasn't into that. It seemed too weird and hippy-dippy for me. And so I want to create more of a middle ground where people can go and learn these soulful habits. And that's why I became a certified meditation coach, is to teach meditation to like the normal average human being without like growing my hair out and rubbing mala beads.
I love it. This is the Mormon hippie right here.
Yeah, the Mormon hippie
we're talking to, which, by the way, is far more like sort of David Bowie going to space than it is anything. It's hilarious, actually, just to sort of hearing you talk about this of the hippie dippies. Meanwhile, my wife's a yoga teacher, and it's all about the hippie. I live in Woodstock, New York.
Yeah,
I'm in the heart of Crunchville up here. So
you're in it.
I'm in it, mate. I by the way, I'm not a hippie or any of those things. So, but I appreciate it. Live and let live. But So okay, so people, how do they actually use an app? I mean, what you said earlier that you don't expect people to do ayahuasca or to be necessarily doing the drugs. Do you encourage it on the app, or how do people approach it? How does it work?
Yeah, so the app, we don't talk about psychedelic use at all on the app. So the app is really mindfulness practices. So when you first log in, you're going to set some goals for your life just to kind of keep them on the forefront of your mind. Because I've realized a lot of people in life don't even know what direction they're heading. So let's kind of get our feet in the ground and see which direction we're going to go. And then on a daily basis, the daily shifts, you're going to get reminders on your phone for very simple breathwork techniques, gratitude practices, reminders to stay hydrated, to eat healthy, to move your body, right? To do your to-do list, to take little mini meditations, and just these really simple, easy to use tactics to keep you aligned and centered, because life is crazy. I mean, especially right now, it's an insane time to be on planet Earth, insane. And just like you said, you've had a lot of people on talking about mental health. And I think it's really important that we incorporate these mental health techniques, such as meditation and breathwork, and especially gratitude, to keep us grounded in these turbulent times.
Ultimately, we were like, oh, it's a crazy time to be on planet Earth. But if you look at history, have you ever watched, I mean, we any of us watch any show from back in the day, like if you watch Netflix and there's the show about the Romans, or there's a show about the Vikings, or there's a show about, bloody hell, you think we have it bad now. Imagine if there were marauding Vikings raping and pillaging through your village. Imagine if you lived through the Spanish flu when 20 million people died and they had no cure. Imagine if you lived through the Second World War, the First World War, when you had rationing and people were bombing, flying airplanes above your house and dropping bombs all over it, which is when my mum was alive. There was just like, we think we have it hard. It's always been hard. It's always been tough. It's actually much easier now for some extent.
But I think, but the problem, I think the advent of, that was just the bomb, tough life, Spanish flu, bombings, living as a 20-year-old in Syria right now, you've never known anything other than war, right? 20 years, that's first 20 years of your life, you've just been in a war in your house and you haven't got out. But that kept kind of people focused and occupied, and it's like fight. It's like fight or flight, right? You're constantly kind of up. It kept you busy. It kept you focused. It didn't give you time to. I mean, the concept of meditation during the Blitz probably it sounds absolutely ridiculous. But now what we've got is with like the younger generation. I was reading about this yesterday. Facebook have just been sort of busted for. That report that's been leaked, that they know that the effects that Instagram has on teenagers. They've done the study, actually they know it's having on these young minds. So in the old days, young minds, we've gone to school, discipline, blah, 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 this is what it was. Generally, the old generation protected you. You grew up, in the same vein, probably the same village. Everything was quite standard. We're now kind of exposing, these, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds to this sort of awful, really it's really poisonous kind of insecure, making people feel insecure, making people getting body shame, making, like you were saying when you were at school and you were the kind of fat kid, you've got kids literally comparing themselves and the sort of depression that people are going through for look at young kids seeing this. Because we haven't got a kind of bombing and wars going on, we haven't got anything to panic about, But is it now more difficult because actually we haven't got sort of the natural kind of risk around us, and the risk is actually staring us in the face. It's kind of like why is there more teenage depression? Why are people generally so much less happy with the quality of their life, when we've never been in a point in history where we've had so much peace and such a great quality of living? Why is mental health, it's not because people have just discovered mental health. Why do you think mental health even allowed to become an issue?
Good point, Tom. Yeah. I appreciate that, actually. What do you think, Doug?
I think we're at a war with our mental psyche, right? We are attacked, our attention, we've never been bombarded with this much information ever. The history of humankind, where I can literally pick up my phone and have access to any information and talk to anyone in the world and get insights on any topic. As natural humans, we like to be desirable, right? We want to be desired upon, and so now there's a bar. There's an actual rating system to be desirable, and it's really simple and really easy to click, and it's a way to be. And we're social beings as well, and so we've is now I can compare myself to other people, and I can now see if I'm desirable or not, whether it's through my physical appearance or my wealth or whatever it may be. And it's shown to us that those that are desirable equates happiness, right? I have the perfect body, then I'll get the really pretty girl with the blonde hair and the big boobs, and I can get, any house I want. If I have a successful job, then I can get a bigger house, and that equals fun. And so marketing behind all this has told us that if you get bigger, nicer, better things, you can have happiness too. And so it's like we're all at war with each other, trying to be number one and being the most desirable, and it's literally killing us. And we're at war with our minds, right? We're all at war with our own mind.
No, I think that's a fascinating point, actually. And I've often thought, and I've talked to my wife about this too, where when we travel to Europe and we go to small towns in sort of Italy, for example, and you find people who are multi-generational, owning a restaurant, and people grow up, waiting tables, and they're very happy waiting a table their entire life. It's not a, as we have in the US, you wait a table. It's a sort of part-time job that because you're looking to become an actress or an actor, or you're looking to go on to do something else, and it's not a job. It's almost like it's like a part. Meanwhile, it's people oftentimes in Europe, they're family-owned businesses, and they're happy to be happy.
Less. I mean, sorry, you said about Italy, less and less. I think it's kind of. Yes, maybe 25 years ago. But now, no, the Italians are paying people to go and inhabit these towns up in the hills, because all the young have gone. Because the young don't want to do that kind of, run the little restaurant or the bar that their parents did. They see Instagram and they want a friggin' jet plane. They want like the bright lights of Milan. They want the kind of, again, the pretty girlfriend this is a real, it's like that essence of, no one is being taught how to appreciate themselves.
Yeah, and I think at the core on that note, Tom, I think a big problem is people, this is going to sound corny, but people don't love themselves, right? They have that story that they're not enough. And so the external validation, it feels really, really good for a short time. And so we get addicted, our dopamine and serotonin receptors get addicted to validation. So it's like, okay, if I can have a certain amount of followers on Instagram or be in the private jet, then I'll be enough. And so people are expecting something outside of them to fulfill their internal wound, right? I need you to tell me I'm great. I need the hot partner so I can finally feel good inside. What people don't realize is that cycle doesn't last. As long as you're expecting something outside of you to solve an internal problem, you'll never be fulfilled. And so that's the big message of my book is like I said, it's corny, but learning to truly, truly at your core, love yourself and accept yourself completely frees you, because I no longer need external validation. I'll always want it. External validation feels good. But if I don't need it anymore, I can show up as my most unique, weird spaceman suit self with my earbuds on, and I don't give a shit because I love me. And so that allows me to actually share my uniqueness and my art and my gifts with the world, because my self-worth isn't dictated upon how it lands.
I love the way you wrap the end into the beginning, or the beginning into the end. But brilliant. Look, this is part of your thing. I've heard you talk about, and I've done my research on you. You talk about the success void, and this is sort of a part of that, right? There's a lot of people out there who achieve a lot in life, get to a certain status, and from the outside it looks perfect. It looks great. It looks like you've achieved it all, but inside there's a huge hole. You feel like there's something completely, you've missed something, and this can't be what life's about, because ultimately, and it goes back to the sort of, if you even, not to quote the Bible, but it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get through the gates of heaven. There's an element of the fact that all the material goods that we might collect on earth that don't actually make a difference. So that traveling on that private jet, doing certain things, they're not going to actually fulfill us. They seem like that's what we needed. That's what we wanted. That was the goal. But ultimately, once you've done it, you're like, well, shit, I still have this hole inside of me. I still feel either like I'm not worth it. I feel guilty. I feel like I'm, shouldn't be here, or I feel like that I need something else, or it continues on. And is that what the success void is all about?
Yeah, and the thing that's so tricky about the success void is that getting the private jet, getting the girl, getting the money, getting the car, it works, but for a very short time. You get this hit where you feel like you're on top of the world, and you get the new Porsche, and you take your friends on a drive, and you get to rip it down State Street, and it feels great for a very short time. And so you think that it's like, okay, well, that worked for a short time. Maybe I just need to go bigger and you get the newer one or the prettier girl or on the bigger jet, right? And so you get stuck in this rat race because it actually works for a short time, but it's not sustainable. And so that's what was happening with me in my 20s was, I wasn't making like crazy millions and millions and millions of dollars, but for my age bracket, I was in the 1%. Right, for being 24 years old and making $1 million, that's in the 1%. So I realized, I'm like, wait, this isn't working. This isn't working. And that was actually like the scary point in my life, which actually led me down the rabbit hole. But nobody can fix you but you. And that's what I realized. And that's the work I did.
So at what point, I mean, given what we know and where we are, how to get the message across of happiness happiness isn't here. It's not in your wallet. It's not freaking jets. Happiness is solely completely in here. I had a billionaire neighbor, and I asked him the other day. He just made another. He just doubled his money, and I went, when's it? When are you gonna? When can you relax? It's never enough. It's never enough. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, I am so freaking glad that I'm like almost £1 billion poorer than him, but just so fucking, I literally can spend more time thinking about how fucking great I am to myself in silence in a room than I do about how much money I got, And another friend rang me the other day and said, how are you? And I said, I'm wonderful. And he went, what, you're wonderful? You're having a wonderful time. I said, I'm wonderful. I'm fucking great. I said, you asked me how I am. It's just amazing. I'm like probably the most amazing person I know, actually. And I mean it, and I really meant it. I absolutely sit here and I mean it now. But that level of freedom, and it is freedom. It's complete freedom, and it is freedom. And I mean, I'm at that place where I have these levels of freedom. So long as I'm not doing anything to other people that I wouldn't want done to myself. Treating people in the way you want to be treated, then seriously, what's going to stop you? But I find it's quite, I don't meet that many people in life who kind of have that level of freedom and have this level of like, self-love. And I remember a time when I was basically love yourself. That's fucking weird. I mean, but you didn't really understand the meaning. What, low self-esteem? Well, I know I got low self-esteem, but how do I get it? But actually suddenly it comes to you, it's just a right, you better work, do that again, do the homework. How can we change this? We're feeding 12-year-olds Instagram and this kind of shit, and we're like really screwing up here. I mean, really screwing people's brains up. We haven't got religion, which used to actually teach you self-worth. I mean, if you can follow the 10 commandments and pat yourself on the back, you kind of love yourself for being good in the eyes of God, right? I mean, that's at least sort of teaching you about loving yourself, right? But not more than, than you love God, but it still kept you in the parameters. We don't even have that anymore. I mean, how's it going to come around? I mean, is it going to come around?
That's a really good question. And I think that's my mission, and I think the first step for me was getting this book out, right? And just showing like, hey, like, it is corny as it sounds, self-love is the ultimate superpower. Because like you said, it is absolute true freedom. And what's interesting too on that note is making money, being successful, driving a Rolls Royce isn't bad. It's not a bad thing. But if you're trying to use those things to make you feel okay, you're toast. It's over, right? So I say, go heal yourself first. Go learn to love yourself. Go fix your wounds. Be the most happy, enthusiastic, loving human being there is. Then go get the Rolls Royce and make the $1 billion and get the jet. That's fine. But it's like, if you're using those things to try and fix you, you're in trouble. And so how do we get out of this mental pandemic? And I don't know. And I'm going to do my very, very best to share this message and help people learn to love themselves, because I think that's what the world needs right now.
And when you say love yourself, I mean, I think for some people, I think where they get confused is, there's a sort of fine line, right, between conceit and confidence.
Yeah.
And the difference, people, being that clearly, to say one love oneself does not mean that you think you're better than others.
Mm-mm.
It has to do with whether you believe that you are good enough and worth it in the first place.
It's full self acceptance of where you are right now.
Yeah, without the need to go in front of a mirror, flexing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think it reminds me of my favorite definition of contentment, which is being very content. Like I fully accept where I am in life right now, while being optimistic of a better future.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm going to get better. I have a lot of flaws right now, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay being flawed, right? But I'm gonna do my best to become better. And I'm enjoying the journey where I am, and I'm learning to love this version of me today.
That is what I tell myself every day I wake up hungover.
Yeah.
I will get better. I have done this before. There is a brighter future ahead of me, and I just need to behave myself, and I will get there. Everybody, this is amazing. Holy shit, we're alive. We're talking to Doug Cartwright. There's the book right there. If you're watching, it's a great book. Tom, last orders, my friend.
Okay, they say you can lead a horse to water, right? Do you consider that you can make people drink, or do you just make people thirstier?
I don't think you can make people drink, and I don't think you can make people thirsty, but I think I can help people become aware that they are thirsty and that there is water.
Great answer.
Good answer. That's a good answer.
Another weird one, given the religion thing I just said. Do you see religion as a force for good or bad in general?
In general.
And Instagram is not a religion. One of the classic religions.
In general, I would say it's a force for good. I think at the core root, I think the intentions are pure and positive. It's when ego gets involved with it that it can make it a little muddy and maybe not a force for good. But to answer your question, overall, I would say good.
Right, good answer. Serendipity or synchronicity or both?
To me, I think they're the same thing.
Right.
And 100% believer. And I've had too many experiences in my life where I'm like, okay, this is divine intervention. I surrender. Like, when you're on the right path, living in a life of integrity, you'll see the dots connect.
Okay, answer the question. Final question. But this is a little different from than we've ever asked before. Normally I'd say shaken or stirred, but I'm going to ask you shaken, stirred, or blended.
I'm a shaken guy, because when I do get a drink, my go-to is a spicy margarita with mezcal. And they shake that one up.
Good answer there.
They shake that one up. And meanwhile, he did not bring that to the Shaken and Stirred show, people. No. Oh, Mr. Doug Wright, holy shit, we're alive. Decided to drink something that looked like it was going to kill him. Hey, living on the edge as usual. Doug Cartwright, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Doug_Cartwright on Instagram. They can buy your book on Amazon and anywhere good books are sold. Holy shit, we're alive. What else do we need to know about you, my friend?
#1 bestseller. I'm super proud of that. We hit #1 bestseller on Amazon, which is super exciting. And I actually respond to all of my DMs on Instagram. So if you have a question or something's coming up or my book resonated with you, shoot me a DM on Instagram and I'll respond to you.
He says that now, but when he has over 1 million followers, that's the case. But
that
anyway,
might change.
Get it while you can, is all I can say. And by the way, it was #1 on the bestseller ranking list on Amazon within 24 hours, people. So get this book. It means something and it really will make a difference. And you'll be happy about the holy shit, we're alive. You'll be alive. Everybody, shaken and stirred. See you next week. What a great episode this was. Doug, you're an absolute gem. Good luck with everything. And I look forward to meeting you in person and having a cocktail and one of those margaritas with you soon.
That'll happen, my friend. Much love.
Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.